So ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying good afternoon and thank you for joining us today. As I like to say, welcome to the deep freeze. I don't know if it's anybody else, it's cold in here. All right. I walked in here, I was like, whew, all right, that'll keep us on our toes. But I do want to say thank you for joining us this afternoon. And we're really excited to have this timely discussion on actively engaging residential customers in making the transition to this clean energy economy affordably, reliably, and equitably. And to do that with me today, we have some great panelists. But let me introduce myself. I'm Calvin Butler, Executive Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Exelon. And I want to just tell you who I'm joined with today. We got Helen Burt, Chief Customer Officer with National Grid, Matt O'Keefe, Head of OPower, and Marie Steele, Vice President of Electrification and Energy Services with NV Energy. And as many of you know, a little bit, I'm going to have some opening comments to kind of frame this discussion, but I know my panelists well enough is that we won't have to pry information out of them. And as we continue to have this conversation, if we have time at the end, we'll open it up for questions from the audience, so please think of some questions, and I apologize for my back here. Please don't hesitate to ask questions towards the end. We'll see if we can save some time there. But let me tell you a little bit about Exelon and why I think EEI asked me to moderate this distinguished panel. As many of you know, Exelon is the largest T&D company in the country with the responsibility and the privilege to serve 10.5 million customers across the Mid-Atlantic and Chicago. Our utilities operate in some of the most forward-leaning jurisdictions on climate and clean energy, including driving towards net zero emissions and 100% clean energy and renewable energy. Our jurisdictions, like many of yours, have very ambitious goals around EVs, distributed solar and storage, and energy efficiency and demand response. And these policies are not just being developed in a vacuum, rather they are being driven by our customers. And these policies, with our customers and communities, want to take action to combat climate change, reduce air pollution, and build resilience in the future. At Exelon, we recognize that we have to take action, and leading in this space through our Path to Clean initiative, where we're investing billions of dollars to make our system smarter, stronger, and cleaner. As all of us continue to make our systems more decarbonized, more resilient, and more interconnected to enable these goals, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fundamentally transform the relationships we have with our residential customers. Because at the end of the day, customers are and should be at the core of everything we do. What our customers want and need is evolving. And that evolution is driving us as an industry to innovate and think differently about how we serve them. Our customers are making value-based choices about their electricity and energy use. They want more self-sufficiency. They want increasing levels of reliability and resilience. They want cleaner, more climate-friendly energy options. They want their bills to be affordable. And they want their electric companies, all of us, to help enable this future for them. And at the same time, we need our customers to make this shift to cleaner, lower carbon energy choices as we all work in collaboration with our jurisdictions to meet their climate and clean energy goals. So, to start this conversation, I'm going to make the following statement. To ensure the clean energy transition is achieved affordably, equitably, and reliably, we will absolutely need our customers to engage in a persistent and consistent way that works for them. So the question is, how do we best engage them? How do we develop a more robust relationship with our residential customers while we make this transition? How do we use data to differentiate our engagement and plan our customer programs to meet their unique needs, while also aligning with our grid planning and operations? How will we deliver services and solutions to customers that appeal to their own values and priorities? How do we package products, services, and offerings to make customer participation easy and worry-free? And most critically, how do we design these programs to ensure equity? For example, how can we unlock additional value for energy efficiency and demand response programs? We know that the cleanest and cheapest kilowatt hour is the one that was never produced and never consumed. So how do we structure programs and products that best meet the needs of these customers, especially in our most vulnerable communities? And how can we better value demand flexibility, and what are the policies we need to drive to make that happen? So, I've teed the questions.
Just a couple.
The answer.
You have 3 hours, correct?
The great part, I could tee it up and I have to answer one of them. And I am looking forward to today's conversation. So to get us started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to do a couple of things. One, quickly introduce themselves and provide some high-level thoughts on the evolving relationship with our residential customers and how each of your companies is positioning themselves. So, Helen, let's start with you.
Oh, okay. My name is Helen Burt. I'm Chief Customer Officer with National Grid. For those of you who don't know who we are, we're a multinational utility company. We serve about 14 million customers, about 7 million in the UK, and about 7 million in Massachusetts and New York. We most recently sold our Rhode Island business to PPL. Very sad for me because I love Rhode Island. If you've never been there, you should go there. It's a wonderful place. But anyway, I can't make that excuse anymore to go check on the lines or
Do
something.
summer home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I'm so glad you're asking these questions about residential customers, because our business customers are starting to lead us. You know, it's not unusual probably to any of you. I told the story earlier today. I had a meeting with Walmart, I don't know, 6 months ago. It was my first in-person meeting, you know, post-COVID, and they were quick to tell me they were going to be zero by 2040. And I said, you mean net zero? And they said, no, we mean zero. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's catch up, because, you know, they're expecting us to help them solve those issues. The big guys are. But how do we do that for the residential customers without being, with being a part of their decision and a part of their life without being obtrusive? And then for me, what I've been working on for the last probably 6 months in some level of detail is this notion of equity. Not just EJ communities, but how are we thinking about our LMI customers? And for me, this has become a really, I mean, it's very obvious when I say it out loud, but for me, I had to kind of think about it, like, why didn't I think of this sooner? Because utilities do a really nice job of serving these sort of residential customers, and you know, this persona and that persona and that persona, and we market and we do all kinds of things. But in general, when we get to our customers who need us the most, we tend to think of them as a homogeneous, oh, then there's those customers who have trouble paying, or those customers who are at some percentage of the national poverty rate. So I've been spending a lot of time working with a couple of cohorts and with, actually with the EEI, to really start to think about how can we learn more about that? And how can we focus our programs where they're just right, where they're needed the most?
Because you know I'm going to dive into and ask you a little bit more about that to explain.
Can't wait.
This is going to be great. So, Matt, can you share your thoughts with us?
Sure. Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Matt O'Keefe. I lead OPower as part of Oracle Energy and Water. And OPower is the company that came up with the groundbreaking idea of bringing behavioral science and integrating that into energy efficiency. And since bringing that to our industry about 15 years ago, we've been building and building and building to the point now that there are two big benchmarks I want to highlight. One is that we've helped our customers, Exelon, National Grid, others, save over 30 terawatt hours of energy. And we have now sent our 1 billionth home energy report. Once you've sent 1 billion home energy reports, you start to ask yourself, what's next? And do we have a role to play in the future? And so in really thinking through this question, we worked with the Brattle Group last year to take a look at what's the most impactful thing that can be done for emissions reduction in the residential sector. And we expected that efficiency would have a role to play. We expected that customer decisions would have a role to play. But we had no idea that Brattle Group would identify that customer actions, utility customer actions, is worth 2 times as much in emissions reductions by 2040 as clean energy supply. So this is that kick in the butt we all needed to remind ourselves that folks need to make decisions about electrification for transportation, need to make decisions about where to put solar, they need to make decisions about electrifying their home, and they need to change their behavior, which is the largest part of that gap that we can fill. So that's why I'm here, going to talk way too fast about this panel, I'm sure, because I'm so excited about it, but thanks, Calvin, for the question.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. And finally, Marie, we look forward to hearing about your vision of NV Energy's perspective.
Sure. So Marie Steele with NV Energy. For those of you that don't know, that's an investor-owned utility that serves about 90% of Nevada. We are a greater part of Berkshire Hathaway Energy, but I recognize I'm at a utility conference, so you probably know that already. And so the way that we think about it, and it's how we've now structured the organization. So, and I think a lot of us are struggling with this at the moment, is how to optimize our customers and also for the grid such that we can reach these sustainability and decarbonization goals. And so from NV Energy, we actually put all of our customer programs together with integrated grid planning in our distributed resource plan so that we can go across that customer channel and also that grid channel so that we can make sure that we're optimizing all of this because our customers are going to be such a big component of us meeting our sustainability goals. You know, in Nevada, we have 100% decarbonization by 2050 and 50% renewables by 2030. And DER and our customers are going to play a huge part of that. And so that's our task there. And then from an engagement perspective, one of the things we've really embraced over the past couple of years during the pandemic and in a special session is that the evolution of LMI to LMI plus historically underserved communities. And so historically underserved communities is now defined in statute in Nevada, and so we can track that to census tracts and to exact schools and to types of customers, that's an additional layer of data to help us really target those communities and make sure that we're making the investments there. And another thing really stepping back is engagement. We took, you know, some hard lessons in policy that we didn't include the right people in some of our investments going forward. So we met with our community-based organizations on where they want to see investments, really doubling down on stakeholder engagement. You know, we launched our new campaign this week for our customer programs, and we did that with our community partners. They helped us pick our advertising firm, helped us pick the messaging to make sure that it was inclusive and looked like the residents that we serve and the communities that we serve. So we're going all in. You know, we'll learn, and we're using data to support it, but it's a really exciting time.
So what's exciting about when you have a panel of experts like this, they already answer all the questions before you get in. But what you've done, I want to take a moment to allow you to get in depth with that, and this is for each of you, because you all have hit on why engaging the customer is important. But I really would like to understand, what do we need them to do in this transition? And because you said they're critical for us to meet our goals and to really drive this. And let's start with you, Helen. What do we need to do? And then we're going to go, all three of you, and then I'm going to come back from a data question that you guys all hit on, and I'm going to start that one. Okay, so please.
Yeah, so what do we need them to do? And this is interesting. What do we need them to do when? So I think that's part of it as well. And I think it's not the same for every customer. So I talked to you about the thing I've been working on on LMI customers. Simple things, simple energy efficiency, simple weatherization, simple things can make a big difference in that sector. And we're not reaching it. You know, all the way to we need them to interact and to react to what's happening on the grid and what's happening in the power sector. The thing that concerns me the most is, and the thing that excites me the most is the future orientation of our business and the kind of world that we're creating and all the young people that are graduating from college now that want to be a part of it, and they're just so excited about it. And it's beyond exciting. The thing that concerns me is that I know this winter and this summer and next spring and next summer and next winter, a lot of our power is going to be produced by fossil fuels, and a lot of our power is going to be produced by natural gas. And some of the forward price curves on natural gas are outrageous. Right. And so how do you put all that together? How do you interact to today, with what needs to be done today with the customers and the residential customers in such a way that they're engaged in the future and yet helping solve today's problems. And I think that's for all of us to figure out.
Gotcha. Matt, please.
When we are thinking about how to help our customers engage their customers, we come up with the most amazing ideas, and we're so impressed. And we remember there are people on the other end of this, and we always have to step back and assess our own hypocrisies. When you did that remodel, did you put in an induction stove, or did you keep that gas? Right. You know, when your hot water heater last went out, did you just fix it, or just replace it with the same thing because you didn't have time to upgrade it and get a new panel, or did you keep it? And so we are thinking about these complex problems all the time. So what do we need customers to do? Everything, but also what's right for them, because most of these things we're asking them to do are a sacrifice. Spending money on things they wouldn't otherwise want to spend money on, interact in their home in ways they would otherwise not want to interact in their home. So to me, it's about highlighting where there are the benefits for them, targeting the right programs for those individual homes so that they're not making the wrong sacrifice, or that they're actually making decisions that are beneficial for them. And so to me, that underlying ongoing layer of education and getting folks to understand what they can do when the time is right is really critical, because you never know when folks can be prepared to make a decision. And so by the time your hot water heater is on the fritz, you already had upgraded your panel, so you can transition. Those are both personal stories I shared about my own. So I promise if PG&E sends out the right message,
Had a
we'll
moment
do the right thing in the
all right,
future.
all right.
Yeah.
So Marie, please, you started this in your intro, so dive a little deeper in.
So what I'm really excited about and what we need our customers to do is actually understand. And so where we are right now around resiliency and reliability and being able to serve the load of this summer is, in our communities, especially in the Southwest, people are starting to get it a whole bunch more, and over the past couple of years, that's been different. But what we're doing is investing in the technology such that they don't have to in the future, right? We're investing in an AI future such that the machines are just going to talk to each other, right? Because like you said, they're people in the end. So we're investing, we've had our AMI data for a really long time, and we're building in advanced DERMS right now such that everything can communicate from a technology perspective, such that we can design technology, tariffs, and then behavioral is there as well. But we're really making sure that we can optimize for the future and meet our goals irrespective of maybe that human interaction.
Marie, you mentioned your AMI data, and I want to take that next question to the data.
Yeah.
In terms of how are we using data to inform and drive our customer programs? And I'm going to start with you because I know Matt might stay here for a long time. Start with you, and please.
Yeah. When you think back to the investments and how long we've had it, we had no idea what was going to be possible with all of this, with the smart meters, and what you could layer on top of it. And so, it helps with our call centers, right? You've got this data that comes up immediately to tell folks, disaggregation, maybe you're so it's designed for your customer programs. You're using your air conditioner, please turn it down, or specific program design and marketing has been amazing, right? Because we have targets for energy efficiency. Not that it's also not important, but we have sales targets to meet as well from a regulatory perspective. So it's really helpful on that, just dynamic messaging on performance of that. We're also looking at it from a future perspective on how do we do DER planning, right? So now we can see more what's behind the meter, so I can start to build up that DER forecast rather than it just being a model that says, we think it's 5% this time, right? So I can start to do better DER planning as well. It's really limitless, and right, so it's pretty fantastic.
Thank you. So Matt, I give you a hard time about this.
Justifiably.
But OPower has truly been a great partner to Exelon and countless other electric utility companies. And really, your company has coached, nudged us, and really drove change around how customers think about energy and, more importantly, how they manage their bill. What advice would you give us in using data to engage with customers more effectively?
Thank you for those kind words, Calvin. And I'll get pretty micro here, because nothing is more important to many of us right now who have just invested in electric vehicles about understanding how much we are actually spending on that charging. And so for years, we've had the ability now to disaggregate that usage and let folks know how much they're spending on their bill. But many of our partners, not going to name any names, have been really afraid to share this back out with their customers. They're afraid to let them know that they know this. And we've worked really closely to peel back every bit of fear about this and convince a couple of our clients to start to surface that information and share it proactively. And so I do want to share that at PG&E and SoCal Edison, both utilities have worked with us, and we're now disaggregating that EV usage on their home energy report so that folks can see what portion of their usage is from EVs. And this took a lot of work to get there. Obviously, the technology side is complex, and we're happy to do that work, but it was actually more the personal part. How do we get our utility clients to feel comfortable giving that information? Well, turns out customers want it. And when they get that info, they're going to call the call center less, and they're going to self-serve more. And so what we saw in starting to send out proactively this disaggregated usage on EV charging to let you know how much you used, folks who get that message are using the website at 4 times a higher rate than those who are not getting that. And folks are engaging with and opening their outbound home energy reporting 36% higher than others that are not. And this is basic, exciting information that we already know and already have the technology to do. And I'm just asking my utility partners, don't be so afraid. Because when 95% of people like something, nothing in this country has 95% of people in support of. And so we can help you overcome the barriers, but we got to use ways to present out data like that back in interesting, meaningful ways to customers.
So what you're, if I can, as a company, and I'm thinking about our 6 utilities, we invested in the AMI meter data. We have it all, but how we package it and provide it to our customers to inform and engage them, we shouldn't be afraid. Let's put it out there.
Put it out there.
So if I get all these calls, all right.
Don't let me know
It's
about
worth
that
a couple calls.
Well, actually, that's a good question.
I remember when this first came about, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now, a customer called and was like, are you saying I'm gonna have a grow house? Like, cause they were mad about the disaggregation, but it's so much different now, right? Like it's just so accepted societally and just.
I tease about this, but I can tell you when I was CEO of a utility, one of the biggest comments that I would see people out, they would say, I'm winning on my street about being the most energy efficient house. I mean, they loved it, so I get it. So Helen, let me just take this a different way with you, because you mentioned your focus on LMI customers, and more importantly, as the Chief Customer Officer, I know you've been working with other Chief Customer Officers within EEI on really addressing this important issue and understanding and better serving low to moderate income customers. Tell me why that's so important and what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're letting me talk about this. And I don't have smart meters, which is part of the reason you've got to sort of get data together in every way possible. And it is, it's a lot easier when you do have smart meters.
They're on the way, though.
They are on the way.
Yeah.
To really understand that. And so for me, that's really kind of where it started. I'm very data-driven when I try to approach something and try to understand what makes customers the whole humans that they are and the segments that they are and the personas that they are, and how do we serve them and how do we build programs for them. And I love to do that stuff, and I think it's really what really good utilities do. I found that difficult without having more data. And I did find that we had a very large chunk of customers, and we aren't the only utility that has a very large chunk of customers that just fall within some sort of the poverty level. And they tend to get the same kind of credit collections activities. They tend to get the same kind of notices. Everything's the same. And they're very different. And so working with IEI, through EEI, we put together a cohort group. There's 3 of us. It's Northwestern Energy, it's DTE, and DTE probably started it. And then I jumped on it as fast as I could because I thought, well, this could be great for us, right? And we're going to learn some things. I got to tell you, it's been rather surprising. There are things that you might, and we're, again, only halfway through. We've just put all the data that we had. It's been enriched with 650 different data elements. A lot of work with a lot of people who know how to do the work around data. And we found that each of us have 4 cohorts, and they're not that different. And it's interesting, in our case, 61% of my LMI customers are not very often in arrears. And so you think about how often do I send them messages? How often do I have them on the list because they're an LMI segment of customers? How can I save money by not treating them in a way that they're having an issue with? Probably another 27% fall in and out, two different other cohorts. And then there's only 12% of my customer base that is constantly in arrears. And then how do I manage that differently? And how do we serve them in a way that's respectful, helpful, and gets them along the journey? Because this is about, I have a very big passion about who we are as regulated electric utilities. And of all of the groups, everybody can come in and say, well, let's go for this clean energy journey, and here's something new, and here's something new. But we're the ones who have an obligation to serve everyone, and to treat everyone fairly and equitably, and make sure that there is no one left behind on the journey. And when you take that seriously, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, it does. The pandemic has brought to light, you talked about people moving in and out. I would love, Maria's utility, I would love to hear your perspective of how your company is addressing that, because through the last 2 years in the pandemic, those who would have never thought they would be sitting in this situation are faced with it. How have you guys been managing it?
The transient nature of the customers?
That and just the low to moderate income, because the definition is very different today than it was 2.5 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, so especially with the pandemic in Southern Nevada, Nevada was hit probably the hardest, right? So in the community in Las Vegas, it was really hard, but it's also something beautiful for a community to come together to make sure that we're putting funds towards supporting folks with utility, but really doubling down. How do we reach out to them, and the utilities working across each other, across communications and natural gas and us, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those customers to support them. But it created new partnerships. It created new brainstorms together of what new programs could look like and meeting the future needs. So we took that opportunity not just to support them in that moment, but also to make sure that we're building the future that we want together. So it was really actually beneficial for the community as well.
Matt, anything you'd like to add there? Recognizing that you are in the business of consolidating and collecting data.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to share with this audience about really how you've addressed this issue as a company?
So I think that what you guys just said is so important for us all to truly internalize. 29% of Americans had a hard time paying a utility bill for the first time ever during the pandemic. 29%. And so these are people who've never accessed any programs. These are people who've never actually even had to Google, like, how do I get help on my bill? Things that are really change your self-worth. And so we did the opposite of look at our massive data sets. We went back and we did hundreds of hours of focus groups with individuals. And I'll never forget looking back at this video of this woman who volunteered for this focus group on this issue. And she just said, I'm just pleading for a little grace from my utility. I have to pay my bill and I missed that. I have to pay because I had to turn off my bill, and then I had to, they went through the process. You guys have all improved dramatically. But she just asked for a little grace. And then we asked, what does that mean? And ultimately it came down to, like, help me help myself before I need your help as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so we worked with ComEd, and at ComEd, we reimagined who was LMI. As Helen was describing, it was a whole new cohort of folks that were not that bottom, is it 5 to 10% of folks are
12 for me.
12, okay, that are really, really struggling, but that in-between group. And so we worked with ComEd to target folks with high bill alerting well in advance of when a bill would be due. Send weekly energy updates to let folks know how they're doing and what their bill is going to be if they're acting in this way, and then providing tips for them. And this was a remarkably positive experience. 2.5 million customer communications during this period, and we saw 85% satisfaction with this, and particular love for, I really cannot believe this, the weekly energy update. I don't want to, I'm not that interested in my energy usage, but it was that micro because it let folks know early. And so that proactivity is our way of contributing to the grace which you guys are already showing to your customers, but I am so impressed at what ComEd did in partnership with us there, and I think there's a lot more of that to come.
Thank you. So I want to shift this conversation to spend some time talking about pricing plans, bill certainty, and more around subscription services. For those of us who have been in this industry for a while, we have all heard the phrase, a smart meter needs a smart rate. But yet, we have not seen that happen on the scale, even though we have smart meters outside of National Grid, deployed in about 80% of our U.S. households. Is it time for us to transition a significant percentage of residential customers onto time-varying rates to provide an incentive for our customers to align their energy use around low cost, low carbon, or other goals? So let me start with you, Marie, because I can't start with Helen.
Right. Yes, yes, and yes. So obviously, in the desert Southwest, we have a time of use rate. We don't have a super high participation in it, right? But like that's something we're using the data to analyze now on what customers can we proactively analyze and see if they would benefit from it so that we can reach out to them, right? So that's one of the steps that we're doing. Certainly the equal pay layering on top of the TOU really helps, and so that's, we keep on in the flex pay and things like that. So it's been really helpful, but I think also the community acknowledgement around our load factor, right? So to serve all of the air conditioning in the summer versus what we need in the winter, our peak is very different, so we have a lot of excess capacity. When I think of future rate design, so very specifically to EV, and it's something we're actively doing right now, is what are the new rate designs around moving transportation electrification and beneficial electrification in general? You know, how can we get that load to shift? Very specifically for us, it's a risk and an opportunity. And so, you know, it doubles the peak of a home, but if I can use it when I have excess capacity, when it's not peak time, it's to the benefit of everybody. So how do we move that? And that's some of the conversations, well, it is the conversations we're having right now as we are looking to file a plan on September 1st is what is the rate design around beneficial electrification, recognizing everybody's not necessarily going to move their load. They're not exactly price sensitive. You know, I'll tell you myself, I charge my car at peak and I run the program in the distributed resource plant. But, you know, so we are looking at that. What is subscription pricing? What does fleet electrification look like? We're even analyzing, you know, demand response. Pick your demand response, right? Level, not demand response. Oh gosh, why can't I think of it now? Anywho, but yes, we're looking at all of that. It's really how do we move people's behaviors to the benefit of all of us to meet all of our carbon goals.
So can I ask Helen, for you, hearing that and the challenges from a regulatory standpoint, because we sit back as an industry and all of you in here talking about where we need to go, but then we run into those regulatory environments and they're saying, no, not really. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing and how we should address that.
Yeah, because I actually think, so I spent 11 years at PG&E, and I was chief customer officer for quite a while, and we did a lot of very unique and aggressive rate modeling. And so I'm going to answer that question because I have a very strong opinion on it. It is a beautiful thing on paper. It's like a math problem that always works, and it's just fabulous. The reality is getting rates changed in the regulatory environment that most of us have is a good 6 to 12 month process. And in some cases in California at that time, it was more like an 18-month to 2-year process.
At least.
Years.
At least.
So when you say, we want to shift the peak, well, I'm telling you, baby, the peak has shifted and you've created another problem for yourself. So, you know, I remember distinctly winding up, we were charging people an astronomical amount of money to use power during the time when it was almost going negative on the grid because of solar that was coming into California at the time. So I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm not big on punitive rates, but I think the concept of pricing signals is important, whether they're you know, opt-in and good things. But I also think you have to have a regulatory framework that can be way more flexible. And you got to have your regulators on board with, here's what we're planning to do, here's what we think we're going to reach at this point, then we're going to shift the price here, then we're going to do that. And I think the more, back to what you were saying, the more you have machines talking to machines,
Yep.
the easier that is.
You know, it's interesting. We always say that, you know, our aspirations don't always match our actions, right? In all of our jurisdictions, we talked about the aspirations in many of our jurisdictions, but then they fall back to the old regulatory models because that's where they're comfortable. So Matt, OPower is helping electric companies with these transitions onto varying rates. As customers transition onto these rates, what should we be doing to support and educate customers?
Yeah.
And what is the ideal time to engage our customers in this process?
Yeah. So I can share that two things are true at once. One, you don't need a price signal to shift folks, and we see that time and time again with either behavioral demand response without any price signal, as well as load shaping we're doing on a daily basis by just letting folks know when they're using during the day and how could they be helpful by moving it. It is also true that price signals, we see them, of course, effective, but by the time they go through the regulatory process, it's honestly not usually large enough to economically be logical for folks to truly move the small things. Big things, of course. So we've worked with a lot of customers who have unique time of use rates or demand rates, like one of your Southwestern colleagues at APS, and to do proactive communication on it, let folks know how much they're going to be spending and how much they could save if they shift a little. And so we do use economic incentives there. But another utility in Southern California, why was I being vague when I was talking about utility in Southern California? At SCE, we layered on this communication that shows you how much you're using each part of the day. And to see if it could supercharge the impact of the TOU, and it really did, because what folks did was they hadn't actually internalized how much a couple cents an hour meant to them, and they hadn't seen it yet, and then they thought about, maybe I will wash my dish, we'll use the dishwasher an hour later. Oh, it ends at 8? I thought it was 7. Oh, that's because what my cell phone plan was in 1999. You know, like we're overlapping all this different information in our heads. And when did it shift? It used to be 4 to 6, you know, all these things. So this ongoing communication isn't patronizing, it's actually helpful and does encourage people to do these small things that do matter for them. And they know it's in their control more.
That's cool. Okay, thank you. So, final question, lightning round question, before we turn it over to our audience with any questions that you may have. So, the lightning round, the question is, what does engaging residential customers with success look like in 2030? So, we're going to start reverse order. So, we're going to go Marie.
Oh, I've been getting it first every time. I think I alluded on it, but it's investing in the technology such that everything is just optimized, right? And so there's a huge technology investment to make sure that it's easy for them, right? And so I also, it's going to change. The peak is going to change. When we have excess renewables, it's going to change. So I'm really envisioning a more of a dynamic tariff perspective. But, you know, really investing in technology, but also being parts of our communities, right? And so a lot of learning about that. I think there's a lot of times all of us think we're the smartest people in the room and we don't have time for stakeholder engagement. We have to get out of that, right? It's their hurtful pain points and designing it together with the communities in which that really hyper-localized, I think it's going to be helpful to achieve the carbon reduction and environmental goals together, but also changing how people feel about their public utility. They're not always their favorite partner. We're seeing a lot of survey data saying, we want you to be your solar provider. We want you to provide us all of this infrastructure that we're not necessarily always thinking that that's our role or maybe anti-competitive. So really evolving the relationship informed with data and technology, but really getting to that hyper-localized partner is the only way we're gonna get this together.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna come to our other utility, Helen.
Yeah, I'm so with you on this hyper-localized, you know, and I've been thinking about this for a long time because it is sort of the origins of what a utility was. How are you serving? Who are you? And I do think that is a part of the answer. I also think that engagement done right in 2030 will be vastly different for different customers. I do think you're going to have some that are going to want to sort of set it and forget it, and that's where you have this fully automated, you know, this is what I want to do, and just make it happen, like make it happen. And then there'll be others that'll want to engage and continue to engage all the time. So I don't think it's a one size fits all, and I think the more we behave as though this one group of customers is all the same or this group is all the same, that's where we lose. So I think you have to be highly flexible, and I think it'll be a lot of different things.
Thank you. Matt?
I have 2 points. Let's see if I can consolidate them into one. bad news in my perspective is that with so many things in our society, we're seeing such bifurcation. You have these customers that need so much from you on two ends. One, they're struggling to pay their bill. They can't literally participate in programs. They're moving a lot. They have all these complexities, and you guys are at the front lines of dealing with that. And that group is getting larger. And then the group that is technologically so advanced and has crazy high expectations for how you're going to serve them and wants to be both off the grid and also needs you when they need you, and then they have batteries and they have solar and EVs, but they also don't want to disconnect yet, that group is going larger too. And serving them both is incredibly hard. And I will say that you pretty much have most of the technologies at your disposal that you need already. And where I see a constant falling down is in the people we have running the programs, either the technology vendor themselves or our utilities. Because we look at these technologies and think they're so impressive. But if we're not putting our smartest, best folks on running the programs on both sides, we're never going to get the full advantage of it. And so that's why a quarter of our more than 500 people at OPower are still on the service delivery part of the business. It takes unbelievable amount of man hours to run these programs effectively, and our best ideas never come from machine to machine. It always comes from someone telling me that in an area of National Grid's territory, they really have this heat pump thing they need to solve, and they tried these 5 things. How do we use this now? And that brain power and program management and those people at your utilities that are running those, when they are excellent, that's when we really soar. And so in 2030, I hope we're still investing in more and more people, because the technology will not solve the problem even remotely on its own.
Okay, thank you. So let's open it up to the audience. If you guys have any questions, if you don't, I have a few more. But I wanted to make sure I gave you time. If you have any question for our panelists? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Just a question on how nimble do you think you can be with rates? You know, if you think about designing a rate today, you design, minimize late afternoon usage, right? If you're designing a rate 10 years, you're probably going to need to control that late evening EV charging. So if you wanted to change significantly every few years, do you think you could do that? Would customer advocates allow that? Would customers allow that? Would regulators allow that?
I'll give you my opinion on that. I think that's why Matt finds what actually comes out of regulators to be minimalized and not impactful. I think it is the challenge. And candidly, anytime you're doing rates that are mandatory, I think you're always going to find that you're never going to have the steep changes in position, because you need somebody to volunteer. It's almost like a game. It's a gamification using the data and the stuff that these guys do. I might want to opt in because I know I can do it. And I think when you can engage customers in that way, it's not for everybody, but it is for some people. I do think that will work, and I do think then they can engage in a more, so you're on level 1, do you think you can make level 2? And I think you can do some of that where customers, and there are customers that will engage they'll do it for carbon, they'll do it for price, they'll do it for a lot of things that make them feel like they're doing something a little bit different. And we have access to the data. Today we have access to that data for the most part. Getting a regulator to let you do something like that, I think it would be great. I don't know who would do it, but I think it would be fantastic. It's like a carbon, you want maybe a rate that has carbon offsets or something different.
Yeah. We're taking it from 2 angles, tariff and technology. And so any EV investment the NV Energy's ever made since 2013 has the telecommunications protocols that we have to be able to communicate with it. We currently don't engage in curtailment, but future-proofing it, right? We saw this over a decade ago, and it's been great it's easy to set standards early before in the middle of it, right? So to not only rely on tariffs, I think there's going to be great opportunity in behavioral now that we can identify where EVs are as well, but really that multi-pronged approach of also just being able to communicate with the chargers, right? Like we can curtail it if we need to. And so, but we've focused a lot on educating our regulators on just the electrification load and the need to be able to move it. So I have high hopes there, but we have such a risk that I think it's much easier, right, than other jurisdictions. But time will tell. We're going to file in September our 3rd EV investment, but proposing new tariffs, saying we need a all hands on deck approach to make sure that this benefits everybody.
I have the beauty of not having to submit rate cases, so I'll
Right.
a little bit different. Right now, the Midwestern regulators are getting together in Chicago, and we have this Oracle Innovation Lab outside of Chicago where we have this incredible technology story of the grid to customer and how all these interact, and partners there like Energy Hub, in fact, are showcasing how this can all be done. And someone on our regulatory team said, why don't we invite the regulators? I was like, they will never want to come. Sold out in 15 minutes. And there are a full busload of 40 commissioners at the Innovation Lab right now. And I will, not what I'm going to say. What I want to say is, utilize your technology partners, use us to think about how we can take this thirst for innovation and make it a reality more, because I do think that thirst remains, it really is there, and I'm hearing the questions they're asking are fantastic, but by the time we get through process, it does always ultimately look differently. So abuse us, abuse our time, and use us to tell your stories as much as you can.
It's true.
Yep.
But I would also add to that, our technology partners and our customers have a lot of sway.
Yes.
I always sit back and say, if you want to get something turned down real quick, have it be the utility idea. But when you lead with your customers and the customers bring you to the table, amazing how it is. And I think that's what happens with our technology partners and our customers. When they have the idea or we partner together and they take it, it's an amazing process to see 100%. It work, and it's really good. Before any other questions in the audience, I don't want to cut it off before we end. Seeing none, let me just take a moment to thank our panelists. You guys have been great. As I anticipated, you needed no prompting, and really appreciate you sharing all your perspectives with us. As an industry, we are very proud of the progress we've made, but as you can see from the conversation, we have a ways to go. And each of our customer classes, each of our customer segments want something, as you guys have alluded, very different from us. And how we go about fulfilling that need and evolving with our customers is going to be our opportunity, but yet the challenge. So I just want to thank you for your interest in this topic and understand that we recognize that we will not be making this journey alone. We will be doing it with our customers and the residential customers specifically. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.